The Crew is an open-world driving game where we play as Alex, a man wrongfully accused of his brother's murder. So of course he wants revenge, and he and his supercar are going to tear across the whole United States to get it. Working as an undercover agent, his job is to climb the ladders of street racing, gun smuggling, and illegal car importing, all while putting together a crew to deliver righteous evil smiting justice. Sounds like a pretty good setup for a driving game, yeah? It should. The game feels similar, in a lot of ways, to Ubisoft Reflections' Driver series. In those games, you were often undercover cops sent on a variety of wacky, varied missions for outrageous criminals until you wormed your way close to the boss. This was always my favorite thing about driving games, the way the narrative structure encourages mission variety and unique objectives. You don't get those with regular racing. I'm proud to say that's the case here too. More than just go fast, you'll be tasked with delivering goods with minimal damage, pushing your evasive abilities to their maximum potential, or doing takedowns, where you have to outsmart and outmaneuver a fellow driver to smash their lights out. And then there are escapes, where you have to make clever use of shortcuts and thoroughly analyze your surroundings to give your foes the slip. It's all classic and it's all good. To be fair, The Crew is a bit easier than most older titles in its genre. Compared to Driver 3, it's an outright cream puff. There are some missions in the mid-game where you can just spam the back on track button to instantly teleport behind your target, ensuring you're never even in danger of losing. These are thankfully few and far between, and The Crew is a long game. It ramps up in difficulty as it goes, naturally. Aside that, there are these little challenges between main missions that play into Alex's thrill-seeking personality. They're breezy, easy to replay, and are a quick way to grind parts. Grind parts for what, you may ask? Well, for the RPG mechanics. The Crew is often called a car-PG, which is adorable and accurate. There's a large emphasis placed on tuning your rides with new gear you acquire. Though, no matter what vehicle you do end up with, the handling is always enjoyable. You can really feel the unique weight of each car and its distinctive characteristics. I love the feeling of mastering my understanding of the cars to thread right through the needle, drift perfectly around tight corners or through shortcuts, and vibe with the impact of tires against terrain. I'm cheap, so I'm mostly stuck with the purple car I started with. I was still having a blast, though. I do have some criticisms too, of course. As good as the narrative is at providing context and drive for your missions, it's not without its flaws. The tone and acting is quite overdramatic, which I think fits the premise, but it ends up clashing with the greedier elements of Ubisoft's business model. There were at least a couple times where I accidentally played an advertisement instead of a story mission. For example, Zoe, Alex's informant, told him of a cop who needed help, so I drove down to the mentioned location, and it began a really bizarre kart racing style minigame where I was given goofy power-ups and a completely bizarre mission parameter, and Zoe kept breaking the fourth wall by talking to me directly about the game mechanics. It was the most surreal 30 minutes of my experience with The Crew. And after it was over, I found out it was just a playable ad for the Calling All Units expansion. That's one instance, but I also stumbled into a minigame where Alex drives around in a monster truck, picking up floating score counters and doing sick flips. This is a hard-edge adrenaline junkie anti-hero. Why is he goofing around like this? Why is the game distracting me with this at all? It runs completely counter to the stakes and tone set up by the narrative. This minigame also was naturally an advertisement for some kind of monthly event junk. Yeah, this game has monthly events, because it's an online-only game. You know everything I mentioned back there? The story, the varied game modes, and the open world? You can't play with any of it unless you first connect to Ubisoft's central server. Ubisoft lies and tells us this is because the game has a multiplayer focus, but the multiplayer is just as easily ignored as any other driving game. I didn't interact with other players once nor could I, because I don't own PlayStation Plus, which is in fact required for multiplayer. The Crew is a live service game with a good driving game buried inside it, and when the two clash, Ubisoft's greed wins out. You can feel the oppressive, avaricious money grubbing everywhere. When I first logged back in after a few years' break, I couldn't even find out how to start driving. For the love of God, do you see a go button anywhere in this menu, or just a bunch of overwhelming ad space? This all came to a head when I finally figured out how to filter out everything except the story missions. You know what's listed in the story missions? Xfinity Challenge Run. If you're unaware, Xfinity is a telecommunications company that sells you cable and internet and the like. And sure enough, if you choose the mission, Alex gets in and And sure enough, if you choose the mission, Alex gets in an Xfinity-branded car and races his way to Chicago. No story, no proper cutscenes or dialogue, no contexts. Absolutely disgraceful. To make matters worse, this Xfinity Challenge mission was one of only 2 story missions available, and the characters didn't inform me which one was essential to progressing the plot, or even what Alex should be doing next in general. Littering your game with ads is one thing, but disguising one as a story-focused mission in this ostensibly story-focused game is just gross. It took me completely out of the experience and I wanted to stop playing. I already paid money to own this. Stop trying to make me buy more garbage, especially at the expense of the core experience. Though, I guess I don't actually own it, do I? Not really, because when the servers eventually go dark, so does the game. I'll never be able to experience it again, and that stinks, because the Crew feels like a glimpse at an endangered genre. Outside of GTA, you gotta dig around for titles like Road Rage or Ride to Hell to get your fix, unless I'm seriously missing something. I highly recommend playing the Crew while you still can, and recapturing the glory days of the driving game genre. Hey, it's the end of the video, and that means I get to talk about my Patreon. If you grab the 2nd or 3rd tiers from it, you can literally force me to make content about a game or film that you love. Or you can offer general support. Speaking of that general support, it's time to list the wonderful patrons I already do have. Here we go. My wonderful supporters are Ipompous, Anonymous, Jay, Marth Sinclair, Call Me Haley, Sam Anderson, Some Call Me Anto, Wapoza, and Torches. There's a link to the Patreon in the description, as well as a link to my Discord server. Thank you all for your time and thoughts, and I'll talk to you in the next video.